two movies, both terribly perverted, one kind of funny, and one absolutely disgusting. Today...
And which is which? With that Peter O'Toole performance, man, there's some humor to be had.
Well, that was a good one. Yeah, well, welcome to the Revenge of the Drive-In. I'm Jim, and you are...
I am Patrick.
There we go, and we're going to be talking about Caligula from 1979 and Nightmare Sisters from 1988, though it could also have been called Sorority Nightmare. That might have been a better name.
Yeah, there were some alternate titles floated around. The script... Listen, I took some notes, and I happen to own Nightmare Sisters on Blu-ray, and so that means I'm listening to the David DeCoteau, Linnea Quigley commentary track. I know they mentioned a different title, and I can't remember if that's in my notes or not, but we'll find it. I mean, we're covering Caligula first anyways, so
Caligula. I was thinking about this, and I really don't think I have much to say about the movie in the sense of it being an actual film. I think I have more to say about it being porn and the issues that kind of surrounded it.
This is, whether it's the first film released as such or not, this is at least our first Penthouse Films film. That's worth noting, because I have no idea how many theatrical releases Penthouse Films would have had.
Back in the day, Playboy, obviously, big magazine brand, big name, had a lot of money behind it. They started making films. Notably, Macbeth is one of them.
Oh, the Roman Polanski Macbeth? Is that the one from the 1974 or so?
That might be it, yeah.
Okay.
That might be it.
Okay, so the interesting thing, what you're saying, is Playboy put money into actual films.
Yeah.
And this is what Penthouse was doing, which at one point or another this film was going to be an actual film, or maybe even was an actual film. I have my questions about that.
Also, I'm not sure it's the 1974 Macbeth, but I know that Playboy did Macbeth, because we had to watch the Playboy Macbeth movie in high school, because it's actually a very good movie. So, Playboy
If it's the Polanski one, I disagree. I was wrong about the year, but this is the Roman Polanski film, 1971.
Oh. Okay.
I didn't think it's a great version, but with the exception of we got like a bunch of Macbeths like recently, it was probably the most successful and memorable English language Macbeth. Of course, the most famous or the greatest Macbeth film is Throne of Blood by director Akira Kurosawa. But yeah, recently we got some good the Fassbender Macbeth, that was good. I didn't see the Denzel Coen brothers one, but
but you're right. The Fassbender one was good. So Playboy, going back to Playboy, because you kind of have to understand what was going on with Playboy at the time. Playboy had kind of cornered the market in terms of gentlemen's magazines, and Hugh Hefner was making a hell of a lot of money, and his brand was very famous around the world.
By the way, regardless of what you think of Playboy, it's an incredible brand. Like that logo and
100%.
Everything. They have fantastic branding all around. The mansion, all of it.
Yeah.
But the idea of the bunny, the if you shoot in the magazine, you're a Playboy bunny. Like everything about that it's like amazing branding.
Yeah, and even before that, like, I mean, the bunny was around, but back in the early 60s, I guess, whenever Playboy started, I don't remember when exactly.
Sometime in the 50s, because Marilyn Monroe was the first issue, which I think those were famously photos that Marilyn Monroe shot when she was like not famous and destitute.
Yes, you're right.
And then Hugh Hefner and or some other asshole just scooped up those photos and threw them on a magazine.
Yeah. Well, when Hugh Hefner had originally come up with the idea for the magazine, it was supposed to be like a gentleman's magazine, much like GQ or something. And there were like rifle cleaning tips and fishing tips and stories
Is that a euphemism?
No, swear to God. And, stories about people fly fishing, in Alaska and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, there's Brick and I have talked about this. I don't know how much of it made it in the podcast, but like Hunter S. Thompson wrote like articles in Playboy, like legitimate, literature appeared in Playboy.
Actual literature appeared in Playboy and poetry and stuff like that.
It didn't used to be a joke to say you read Playboy for the articles. It became a joke maybe in the Pam Anderson era. I don't know.
Yeah, or even in the late 60s, because by the time Penthouse comes out, Playboy thought that they had cornered the market, you see. But when Penthouse comes out, what's his name? Bob? What's
Guccione.
Yes, Bob Guccione.
The Gooch.
he was like, hey, this Playboy thing's cool, but you know what's even cooler? Having women, like, spread their labias on covers and stuff like that, and also taking photos of men with their rock-hard cocks inside of women and putting that in our books.
Is this all before Hustler? Because Hustler's the other one, the other big one. And Hustler's Larry Flint.
Yeah, and I think Hustler came out after Penthouse.
Okay.
Or it might have been the other way around.
And both of those are more hardcore than Playboy.
Yes. Yeah, because they had to compete with Playboy, and they did. Playboy starts on this kind of decline in the 70s and 80s because you have things like Hustler and Penthouse kind of stealing readership because of all the hardcore pornography in them. But Penthouse said, hey, Hugh Hefner's got a private jet, a mansion, Playboy bunnies, they're known all over the world.
He still had the image.
Yeah, and the Gooch goes, and they're making movies. The Gooch goes, how am I going to compete with Playboy? Oh, well, I can afford a jet. I have my Penthouse, whatever the fuck they were called. What were they called? The Penthouse...
Penthouse Pets, I believe.
That's it.
Which
Penthouse
is a decent
Pets.
name.
And then he's like, but we can also make weird movies with all
we
this
can get
money
Peter
that we
O'Toole somehow. we can get Sir John Gielgud. Other than Laurence Olivier, the most respected British thespian in the world. We can get him to appear in this porno film somehow. It is crazy. Now, when I first became aware of Caligula, because Caligula is a notorious film.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I knew it as this like big budget porno that had John Gielgud in it. I don't think I even knew Peter O'Toole was in it. Peter O'Toole's like, oh my God, this is an actor in his prime. He did The Stuntman the next year, which is one of the best performances in film history. He's T.E. Lawrence. I mean, he's one of the greatest actors who's ever lived. We got Malcolm McDowell, who, this is his prime. I mean, this is 8 years after A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. We have Helen Mirren.
We have Helen Mirren, who's kind of probably at the start of her fame. I know she's in some movies in like the late 60s. I don't think she was a huge like international star at any rate, but she's a respected actress at this point. She's done a lot of stage stuff. So I knew it as this like porno movie that somehow got these huge actors in it. And I thought that the film lied to the actors about what the movie was. It turns out the film lied to the filmmakers about the movie they were making. Although I do have my questions about that because, Jim, I don't know what you know of director Tinto Brass.
Not much, other than he's directed various Italian movies.
Yeah, his previous film to this is Salon Kitty.
I saw
which is another one I own on Blu-ray. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my God, what's wrong?
It is another notorious film. It is a sexploitation, Nazi-sploitation film. Salon Kitty, I used to think it was just a stupid title. Salon Kitty was a real brothel. I don't remember if it was in Nazi Germany or if it was in Vichy, France. But it was a brothel where, like, Nazi officers would go and hang out. I know nothing of the plot. I know the movie's reputation. And obviously, I've talked about Joe D'Amato. We're yet to cover a Joe D'Amato film. It was in Berlin. Okay. Yeah. We're yet to cover a Joe D'Amato film. We're yet to cover a Bruno Mattei film. But these Italian smut peddlers, if you will, and we have covered Black Emanuel, the first one. These Italian smut peddlers are out there doing this thing.
Eagle calling base. It's hot as a horse's ass and fly time here, and I don't like the heat. We're awaiting further instructions. We want to get out of this goddamn valley. Over.
Patience is the chief virtue of those who have faith. Mahatma Gandhi, New Delhi, 1946.
Up your ass. Lieutenant Mike London, Shit Creek. The year is now.
And they're not literally porn, but they're riding that line. But then there's also director Pier Paolo Pasolini, who's like a really, really respected director. His films are shown at Cannes and stuff like this, but he's making lascivious films himself. He did his trilogy of literary-inspired anthology sex comedies. He did a Canterbury Tales, he did a Decameron, and he did an Arabian Nights. And these films, though controversial for their sex, were like respected films, and they're considered classics in their own right. Tinto Brass. I don't know if he's a Pasolini. I don't know if he's a D'Amato. He's one of the two, I would suspect. And I don't think we can judge him off of this film based on what he said. He basically lost complete control of this film once principal photography was done, and he insisted to his dying days that this was not his vision.
Yes.
So it's going to depend on when I finally pop that Salon Kitty Blu-ray in, really, before I can pass judgment on him. But I suspect he's more D'Amato than Pasolini, but that's just a guess, though.
I suspect, much like many Italian filmmakers, they use... It's very soft core. There's lots of...
Oh, yeah. No, there's not hardcore stuff, I don't think.
Whereas the Gooch comes in, and the Gooch goes, hey, tits are cool, but you know what's cooler? A movie that we're going to call Caligula, but the alternate title could be called Blowjob the Movie. Because you see dudes sucking off dudes, women sucking off women sucking off midgets, women going down on each other, which I know isn't a blowjob.
Yeah, there's an extended all-female scene.
There's also what I would call an extended blowjob scene where two women are going down on a dude, and then one of them finishes him off to completion.
And and then there's the famous orgy scene, which, in wide shots, which is all Tinto brass, there's a lot of nudity, there's sex, it's not actual unsimulated sex, but there's sex. And then in all the close-ups, I'm assuming that's the Gooch shot stuff.
Yeah, because didn't he go back?
He did go back, but here's the thing. I don't think that stuff is that out of place in this movie, is what I'm saying. Is that, to me, like, and we're almost getting to the review before we get to the plot here, but first of all, I hated this movie. It's been a long time since I've seen a movie for this podcast that I've hated this much. I understand you want to show the excess, the spoils of Caligula. That's his story, is the rampant sexual ribaldry. Sure, I get it, but like, whether you actually show a real penis in a real person's mouth or not, that is a part of the film that Tinto Brass is shooting.
Yeah. And
whether, like, I guess what it boils down to is, I don't think this film has that much to say. Like, it's hard for me to be like, oh, they did him dirty, because I don't think he was making that great of a film, but maybe I can't really say that because I don't know. I mean, we know some of the stuff that was added. We don't know necessarily what was cut. There is a close to 3-hour version of the film that was released in, like, 2022 that I haven't seen, that you haven't seen. They got the seal of approval from Malcolm McDowell, which is like... It's like, okay, great, but like, this film wasn't Malcolm McDowell's vision. But at the same time, I mean, he probably is Gore Vidal is dead, he's the writer. All the filmmakers are dead, so like, McDowell is probably the highest up person in the film that's still alive. It's possible he has a decent idea of what Tinto Brass's vision was, but like, he probably shouldn't be the final say of it.
Well, and even too, I mean, we have to remember, there was also a different vision before Tinto Brass and the Gooch. There was, as you said, Gore Vidal, but most of that they were saying
who's like a famous writer.
Homosexual
like
stuff. Yeah, who was also like a famous... He didn't call himself homosexual, but he called himself bisexual, but I think it was just to get out of the homosexuality label. He spoke a lot about homosexuality. There seemed to be a more, I guess, Greek-style homosexual...
Yeah, the famous joke is the Greeks invented sex, the Romans thought to add women.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. But yeah, so I don't think we'll ever fully know what's what and who did what or who came up with what, except we definitely know that the Gooch did the hardcore stuff.
Yes, having not seen the nearly 3-hour version, and this version, by the way, is 2 hours, 36 minutes, but having not seen the I think they call it the ultimate cut. Having not seen that version, I mean, when did Tinto Brass die? Like, I'm not sure how official that should be viewed. I mean, it's probably a more accurate version to his vision than this was, but he died in... Oh, shit, he's still alive. Never mind. Why, he's 91. Why did Malcolm McDowell? Why was Malcolm McDowell peddling that version around? Why isn't he?
Because I'm sure Brass just wants nothing to do with it.
Interestingly enough, almost everybody involved with this film had wanted nothing to do with it, except for Helen Mirren, who referred to the film. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but she said like a delightful mix of art and genitals, and it's like
which
that's what I would call the cook, the thief, his wife, and her lover. But I don't know about this one.
I think also too, what's interesting is that they had originally approached Orson Welles to play.
Yeah, Tiberius. Orson Welles was going to be Tiberius, who ends up being Peter O'Toole.
Which I think Peter O'Toole did it a million times better than Orson Welles could have done anyways.
Well, that's I want to say something about the performances here. Malcolm McDowell, all-time scenery chewer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a genuinely great performance, but he is very fun to watch because he is almost always at 11. Mm-hmm. But when we see Peter O'Toole, and Peter O'Toole is a relatively small role, when Peter O'Toole yells, that is like, oh my God, this is how you yell. He is so amazing. He is also chewing the scenery. He is not giving this like a genuine T.E. Lawrence performance, but I found him so fun to watch in the, 3 scenes that he's in or whatever. He was great. McDowell's good. O'Toole was like, man, this guy's just the best.
There's a reason Peter O'Toole is Peter O'Toole.
Yeah, and I mean, he's drunk, I'm sure, when he's shooting this, and he's great. John Gielgud, a.k.a. Mr. Magoo, he doesn't really show a lot of emotion. And interestingly, he was given the script, and he's like, no, I don't want to do it. It's pornographic. And here's where it's important to distinguish. You have what's pornographic to British thespian John Gielgud. He's not necessarily thinking the gooch is coming in and shooting hardcore stuff. He's just saying this is pornographic. The way, speaking of Malcolm McDowell, the way A Clockwork Orange would have been considered pornographic in 1971. Mm-hmm. I think that's what Gielgud's thinking. He's not thinking it's literally going to be porn. But that's what it ended up being. And also, like, he said he wasn't doing it. And then they're like, okay, we'll just give you a smaller role. And he's like, okay.
And he was like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know what role he was going to be before. Maybe
Tiberius.
Longinus? It was Tiberius also? Yeah. Okay.
You know what's interesting, actually? So, to actually skip ahead into the movie here for a second, when Gielgud dies, I think his character's name is Nerva.
Yes.
When he commits suicide, and he's laying there in this beautiful, like, marble and glass tub, he's going on about how he's too old to deal with these things anymore, and the rotten senators.
And he's been denying the truth of who Tiberius is all these years, because Tiberius is his friend, but meanwhile he's had like family members murdered and all this stuff.
Yeah. And then he's also like, and I don't want to be around to serve Caligula, who is going to eventually kill me, I'm sure. But then there's a couple lines where he kind of repeats himself, where he says, I'm too old for any of this, I just don't want to be a part of it. And you're like...
And you think that's not scripted?
That's exactly it. I think he's sitting there and he's like, I hate this.
He bounced back. He's up for an Oscar and Arthur a few years later. I think he was a relatively small role in the movie Gandhi. That's the thing, is like as much of a disaster as this film was, at least from the perspective of the people who made it, I don't think it really killed anyone's career or anything. Maybe Tinto Brass. Because, well, Tinto Brass, it's a weird decision to have him come in and do this movie. Again, I'm picturing him as a Joe D'Amato type. Maybe he is more the Pier Paolo Pasolini type, but he's not made an American film prior to this. And he's made, like, weird sex stuff. Again, Salon Kitty. And then he comes in and does this. Like, this movie is trying to be Ben-Hur, but with rampant sex. And it's weird to get I know Italy was doing the sword and sandal thing, but it's just weird to not get someone from Hollywood to do this movie. I know it's an Italian-American production. I wonder why he was the choice.
I think it's because everybody else was turning him down, honestly. I think they did approach 2 American directors, and they turned the film down based on the pornographic content.
Which, again, like, if you're the director, you control... I mean, this, obviously, it didn't end up being the case, apparently, but, like... Because Gore Vidal's script... Now, this does not translate in the film. This is another reason why, again, I don't really know what the film was truly supposed to be. Gore Vidal insisted his script was a corruption narrative of Malcolm McDowell as Caligula. He comes to Rome. He's a young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young man. He sees the spoils of Tiberius, and he's horrified by it. Because Tiberius is having these like weird orgies that involve like freaks, like people with like 2 or 3 faces, and
but there's also lots of attractive people there too.
Oh, sure, yeah, but you got to have some freaks in there.
Yeah, there's and cyclopean peoples.
Yeah, and his reaction is supposed to be he's horrified by it, but then as he has power, he like is corrupted by that. First of all, if his emotion is supposed to be horror when he sees that, does not translate. No. Secondly, maybe I'm just going to say I have the problem with this story, but this story's message, again, Gore Vidal, it's supposed to be absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mm-hmm. Which to me is not generally a relatable human story, because who among us has absolute power? Who among us has any power?
No, but you know what, though?
I teach high school English. What power do I have? Like, how is this story going to mean anything to me? And the thing is, it doesn't mean anything unless you have humanity in it, and I don't think this film has humanity in it.
No, exactly. So this is where I'm going to push back on what you said there about it being a relatable story. I think any normal, level-headed person can say, oh, well, hey, if I ran the country, this is what I would do differently. Hey, if I had the ability, I would change this, I would change that. But I think as average people, we would succumb to this power that we hold. And I think that is a relatively relatable theme, I guess. Though
I would argue it isn't, just because we can never even dream of having anything approaching this power. That's my point of contention.
Well, I think it's relatable in the sense that it's a warning. Because even if we can't dream of having that much power, or we think if we had that much power,
so it's a warning to it's a warning to the 14 people on Earth that could potentially become the president of the United States. Then it's a warning to Benjamin Netanyahu. Like who's it? What's it mean to your Joe Schmo in Nebraska?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, his absolute power is trying to finish the $60 big man steak at the local restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. And God bless him. I wish him all the best with that. But it's you know what this reminds me of?
What?
In tragedy, classical tragedy, Seneca, Sophocles, of course. Mm-hmm. Your tragedies center around great men, kings, emperors. Shakespeare. Your tragedies, at the very least, revolve around the wealthy with Romeo and Juliet, generally going to be kings. And then I had always, this was framed in my high school IB/AP English class as, like, Death of a Salesman was like, no. Tragedy can come for the common man as well. And that's interesting. That's like kind of great, and I like that in a lot of stories of just like your average everyday person, your average everyday scenario can still have the same kind of emotional weight of a king falling from grace. Because I think that's true, and again, that's how those stories are relevant. But like, the Shakespearean tragedies, they're not great because King Lear is a king or because Hamlet is a prince. They're great because there's actual human emotions throughout those plays.
Yes.
With the exception of, I'm not a huge King Lear fan. I think King Lear plays too much as a parable, or like, I don't think there's a lot of Cordelia to me isn't a real character, but whatever. That's, Hamlet is a great example, or Richard III. Richard III, who will forever be my favorite Shakespearean character, is this king who's just a genuine asshole, but at the same time, he has, like, reasons to be that way because he's this hunchback he's Claudius.
Yes, yeah.
To reference, this film kind of downplays Claudius, but, like, Claudius is perhaps the most fascinating real human figure to come out of ancient Rome, and he's just kind of in the background here, but, like, I don't know, man. It's just, this movie doesn't give me that human emotion.
No, so backtracking here a few minutes to where you said that you never really felt like it was a story about Caligula being corrupted.
No, absolutely not. He's an asshole from the start.
Exactly.
And some of that is the historical limitations, because him as a real person had this sexual relationship with his sister, and it's like we see that and we have our own modern day is like, ooh, he's like a weirdo from the start.
Our values.
And so that's like a hurdle the film has to overcome right there in the opening scene.
And I think another hurdle that the film has to overcome, which it never does, and it has to overcome it in the opening scene, is that Caligula is one of several emperors whose names have come down through time as being absolutely batshit crazy people.
Yeah, him and Nero being the main two. Maybe Tiberius is I don't know much about Tiberius.
Tiberius was a pretty good
Commodus, not too kindly thought of. He's depicted by Joaquin Phoenix in the movie Gladiator, I believe. But Commodus, I remember my Latin teacher used to joke, they named the commode after him.
Is that true, or is it just?
It's not true. It's just a good joke, though.
This is such a weird movie because they want you to feel some kind of human emotion, but you are so removed from that because, and I think mostly it's because of all this wild sex and what I'm going to actually call pornography.
Yeah, and now, so what you're saying there is that the gooch is what's keeping you from being invested in the emotions of the story, the character, whatever. I agree and disagree. I do agree, like, once the sex happens, once the sex and more the torture, or the torture just as much with the sex, they mix, of course. Mm-hmm. I certainly understand all that. Once that stuff starts happening, you can't really think of anything else. But I'm going to say, just like right off the bat, it's not working. There are maybe three scenes that I thought were really evocative. That they're really, really well performed by everybody involved. The first one is when he kills Tiberius. It starts rough because it's like a slapstick scene where he's trying to pull Tiberius's ring off, and I'm like, what the hell is this? I don't like this. But then when he has the ring and he's putting it on and he's looking at himself in the mirror, and then Tiberius awakens because he thinks Tiberius is dead at this point. Tiberius wakes up and starts giving that great Peter O'Toole sneer, and he's yelling at him. He's like, give me back my ring. And then in retaliation, he's about to kill him. But then Gemellus comes in, and Gemellus, showing that he's loyal to the next emperor. Macro, showing that he's loyal to the next emperor, decides to kill him himself. I thought that scene's great. And then also the scene where he ends up having the other guy. Who's the guy who sees it? The guy who looks...
Gemellus.
I thought that was Tom Hulse from Animal House and Amadeus. I thought that's Pinto. He looks exactly like him, just kind of blonde and pale and weirdo.
Yeah, he looks almost like an albino.
Caligula knows Macro is loyal to him. He had that nice scene where he burns his hand in the fire for like a minute straight to show his loyalty. And then he goes and he gets Gemellus, and he's like, which man here killed our beloved emperor?
Yeah.
And he identifies Macro, and it's like, wow, just like right off the bat, he's just throwing that guy to the wolves. And it's because, not that Macro hasn't been loyal to him, but he's thinking, if Macro did this to the previous emperor, he could easily just do this to me someday.
Yeah.
And that is really great. That's a great scene. That's a very Henry IV Part 2. Actually, well, Henry IV Part 1 as well. His Prince Hal's relationship with Falstaff. I will. Do not hang plump Jack. And he's like, the second I get the chance to, I'll hang you, dude. You're a criminal. And yeah, we're friends now, but once I'm king, you're that's great. So that scene's awesome. Then I also enjoyed, and again, a little bit of the Shakespeare connection, I enjoyed when Caligula is just kind of slumming it. And he's like, throws on some like commoner's clothes, and he's just going about the town. Very, there's a scene like that in Henry V, when Henry V also, the older version of Prince Hal is going around speaking to the his soldiers, just trying to see like what they think of what's going on in the war and stuff. So I thought those three scenes are great. Everything else, take it or leave it. I mean, some of the scenes of Caligula doing horrific things evoke that horror that they're trying to, like when he rapes both woman and man on their wedding night.
Yeah,
that's horrific.
I mean, should we even get into the plot of this movie, or should we just talk about?
I mean, it's a biopic about Caligula. He takes power and he's evil, and
he also famously declared war on the sea, which you kind of see.
Yeah, there's like kind of a comedy scene with the invasion of Britain.
Yeah, but they're just like a couple hundred miles from Rome. Like they're nowhere near Britain.
Yeah, but they take down some papyrus plants or whatever and bring them back. See, this is proof that we were in Britain.
I think it was Julius Caesar kind of did something similar, except
Julius Caesar actually got shit done though too.
Well, and I think he crossed the channel, landed on the beaches, and collected a bunch of seashells, and then brought them back saying that they conquered Britain.
Yeah, Claudius was truly the one to conquer Britain, I believe. Londinium 43 to 50 AD is when it was founded. That would be Claudius era. Caligula is like late 30s, early 40s AD.
Yeah, 41 is when Caligula.
Yeah, so Londinium is going to be founded under Claudius then. Okay, so.
Oh shit! What was I going to say about this movie? I don't know.
Well, I guess we got to talk a little bit about Helen Mirren. I mean, Dame Helen Mirren.
She's gorgeous.
She's gorgeous. She has the worst fake pregnant belly I've ever seen. It looks like plastic. It looks like, it reminds me of like a little toy Viking shield or something. It looks terrible.
Well, she also has the worst birthing vagina I've seen. It's awful.
Well, clearly you haven't seen Tristram Shandy, a cock and bull story in which an adult Steve Coogan is floating around in like a 10-foot tall womb. That might be the best comedy of the 21st century, other than Sideways, of course, but. Drusilla, Teresa Ann Savoy, who looked very familiar. I know she was a British actress who made a number of Italian movies, didn't make a ton of them.
And she was a Penthouse pet, wasn't she?
Maybe. She was not the original choice. The original choice for Drusilla also had objections to the quote-unquote pornographic nature. And again, we're talking Tinto brass pornography, not Guccione pornography. But she apparently started sewing her open tunic so that to hide like some of the nudity because there's a lot of just like... It's not even nudity, it's just like, it's clothed nudity. It's just like the tunics are very open.
It reminds me a lot of Greco-Roman sculpture. It just seems to be things are hanging out.
It's like the nudity just happens. It's not like, yeah. Now, I wanted to say, one thing we haven't given the movie proper credit for, looks gorgeous.
You're right, and that's what I was going to say. I think the one good thing I have to say about this movie is the sets are gorgeous.
This looks like Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
And it's in service of this. It's baffling.
I know.
But this looks like Ben-Hur, Cleopatra. It looks like any of those big Hollywood epics. But, this is one of those, it's a pet peeve. I was just watching, not too long ago, I watched a bunch of the old classic Disney animated features recently. And I watched Hunchback. And Hunchback, it's a great one. But there's a line in that where they refer to the Kevin Kline character as a knight in shining armor, and it's not ironic. And it really bothered me. I'm like, I just want to see one fucking medieval movie where they correctly use the phrase knight in shining armor. You know what a knight in shining armor means? It means you're a who's never seen combat.
Yes.
You are more focused on your appearance than actually being a good knight. That is what the phrase knight in shining armor meant in the medieval times, and it's been lost to the centuries. But a similar thing to that is none of the statues are painted. We know historically they were painted. They all, as they exist now, are just white marble or whatever.
Well, you know what, actually, a lot of the ancient Greek sculptures were painted. I'm not sure if all of the ancient Roman marble sculptures were painted, because a lot of them were taking heavy inspiration from the Greek sculptures, which by this point...
You just said the Greek ones are painted. Oh, by this time they're not painted. Oh, I see.
Yeah, by this point, a lot of that natural pigment would have faded, and they would have been just white marble.
To the set decorators, to Tinto Brass, whoever, it's possible... They knew they were painted, and they're just like, our image as a public of ancient Rome is that these are not painted, so this would be too weird. And I get that, I respect that, if that's the decision. I have seen a painted version of my favorite sculpture ever, the Augustus of Primaporta, and it's like disgusting. It's like, it looks wrong, and it's like, ooh, I don't care if that's historically accurate. It does not look right. So maybe it would have looked weird if they were painted, and maybe what you're saying is right, is that they weren't. I don't know. But yeah, so going back to the look of the film looks great. There's that giant weed whacker thing, which is impressive.
Oh, dude, that's one of the coolest. It almost looks like that came out of Mad Max, but it looks
It does,
so cool.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking that, but you're right. Yeah, because he's got like one of his enemies. I think it's Macro. Is that
Macro? Yeah.
Yeah, Macro is like buried shoulder deep, and he just has this giant like lawnmower thing moving towards him. Yeah, and I mean giant, it's like 40 feet tall.
Yeah, it's like a giant red wall that has blades coming out from the bottom of it that are just spinning around, much like a lawnmower. And there's people on top with like pole swords. And people in the audience, including Caligula himself, are throwing like potatoes and tomatoes and apples and stuff like that. Or actually, I guess not potatoes, but tomatoes and apples at the people who are buried in this sand. The saddest part about that scene is when Macro looks back towards Caligula, and you can see that he's genuinely terrified, and then he gets his head taken off.
Yeah, so I mean, this is how it works with Caligula throughout the film. Macro is kind of the first casualty, but
Tiberius is the first casualty.
You're right, but that's technically a casualty due to Macro. But no, he basically, if anyone wrongs him, or they don't even have to wrong him, he just has to think that there might be something that they could do.
Or he just has to not like them.
Yeah, or he just has to not like them, like that one soldier. He's basically jealous Proculus gets to marry this gorgeous Italian woman, so I'm going to rape her. And it looks like she was a virgin, but now I'm going to rape you. And you say you're not a virgin?
I'm going to shove my fist up your ass.
I'm going to shove a cake mold first, or, the mashed potatoes or whatever the hell that was.
Yeah.
And then put a little flour in it. And it's like, that scene is like horrific. And then we have Caesonia, who's Helen Mirren. I'm going to say something here. Caligula was the world's first feminist. And yet...
Okay.
No, hear me out.
Okay.
At least some of this is historically accurate, too. He wants, like, when he's first being announced as emperor, he's like, no, you have to announce my sister Drusilla as well. And the Senate doesn't like that. And it's not like a feminist statement. I said that to be provocative, of course, but it's just because he loves his sister.
Well, she's kind of taking the place of empress.
And then even when Caesonia's in the picture, too, he makes the Senate acknowledge her as if she's an empress. Well, I guess she kind of becomes an empress, but like as if she's his equal.
Yes.
And she's not. But then he also walks around and she's on a leash.
Yeah, for part of the movie. Then also, too, and I mean, like, getting the Senate to acknowledge his wife and his sister. Later on, when Caligula becomes even more crazy, he gets the Senate to acknowledge his horse as somebody who's equally as important as he is. Yeah,
because he eventually, he wants to drain the swamp. He wants to make Rome great again. He's got his... He hates the Senate class. He has this... and this ends up, I guess, being the most notorious scene of the movie. He does this... he says something about the senators. I don't remember, but then he's like...
He says that...
Oh, no, yeah. What is the wealthiest business in Rome? It's the brothels. And who are the most lustful women in Rome? The senators' wives. And so he has this giant orgy that he charges people to enter. Mm-hmm. And he claims it's all like senators' wives. Like, these are respectable women. Mm-hmm. And Bob Guccione is just shooting them with in their mouths and stuff.
I've never seen more blowjobs in my life, and this is coming from somebody.
Yeah, this is where Gooch has lost it, or rather, where Tinto Brass loses the film because Gooch takes it over. And
I gotta say,
it goes on for so long.
And one of the scenes, I think
I can't last that long. I don't know about those guys.
This whole orgy scene kicks off with a midget in a mask, by the way, and this woman tackles him, as in she grabs him by his balls and flips him around so she can shove his in her mouth.
I've begun re-editing old episodes, actually like making them true videos, and where they're not just
we can't show anything in
kind of visualize. Like, I'm using clips and stuff. I just did the Emmanuel episode. Who the hell knows if YouTube's going to take that down or not? But I do not look forward to this episode. I'll just say that. In both films, quite frankly, because there's the main women in Nightmare Sisters are topless for half the movie. And I mean, it's nothing like this even, but like, you're going to see a lot of Malcolm McDowell walking around in his tunic or screaming out in the rain because he thinks Gemellus has come to kill him. Like, because I can't show any of this, like, 15 minutes here.
No, but you can show a lot of Peter O'Toole.
Sure. Plenty O'Toole, of course.
Is that your stage name, Plenty O'Toole?
No, that's Diamonds Are Forever. That's Lana Wood.
Oh. Hi, I'm Plenty.
But of course you are.
Plenty O'Toole.
Named after your father, perhaps?
It's kind of hard. If you haven't seen the movie, you have to understand that there's little plot points that you hit every 20 minutes or so, maybe 25 minutes, and then in between these,
it's
like,
just every
5 or
now
10
and then a
minutes
new
of plot
person
points.
angers Caligula. That's kind of it.
That's exactly it. But then in between these plot points, there's ridiculous sex things going on, whether it be orgies. I think there's 3 or 4 orgies in this movie. There's a lesbian scene in this movie that's about 10 minutes long.
That went on for a really long time, yeah.
And it is what you would call hardcore.
And who is that supposed to be?
Just two random women. Just two
I
random
thought it was
women.
supposed. I know it wasn't, but I thought that was supposed to be Caesonia and Drusilla, because it's right after the scene of Caligula crying out in the rain and being calmed down by those two.
Yeah, but he's having sex with
Whatever.
the two of them, and then these 2 women see him having sex with the 2. Anyways,
Yeah.
I would say one of the most interesting shots, one of the most interesting surprises in the movie was when Caligula goes to see Macro's wife, who he plans on marrying, or who she plans on marrying him. He walks into the room, and Macro's wife is kind of on this reclined thing. She's in this reclined position.
Yeah.
And there's men jerking off, and you're getting close-ups of men jerking off into cups and jizzing in these cups and then wiping their cum on her. And then at this point in the movie, you're kind of like, what am I watching exactly? And I'm not going to say like I'm offended by it or anything, because we've all watched porn. You know what I mean? You see the same thing in porn.
Or David DeCoteau films.
Yeah.
Who's to say which is worse? Quite frankly, there's a lot of porn that's better shot than Nightmare Sisters. Most,
absolutely.
I dare say.
There's a lot of porn
Nightmare
that's better
Sisters is
acted,
nothing
too.
but just flat shots. It's just terrible.
But it's just so upsetting with Caligula, because you have the beautiful costumes and these gorgeous over-the-top sets.
The sets, yeah.
Which, by the way, I want to point out, maybe you can find a photo of this. My favorite set is that red marble room where Nerva commits suicide.
Yeah, that's where Nerva kills himself.
That's my favorite set. But yeah, like, so you have this movie with
I think
these
we can get a
beautiful
few
sets.
frames without nudity of that scene for the YouTube version, I think.
Yeah. So you have these beautiful sets, beautiful costumes. You have actually a lot of good actors who are, maybe not doing the best job, but they're good. Except for Peter O'Toole.
Peter O'Toole's phoning it in, but he's still a professional. He's still like, yeah.
And then you have these gorgeous shots of like people in Roman armor, and they're recreating shots of the Praetorian Guard, and part of it you actually feel like you're in ancient Rome. But then lots of these awful sex scenes happen, like men into cups, Caligula raping a woman and then raping her husband, or...
Which is worth noting, because that's, of the scenes we're talking about, that's the one that's not hardcore.
Yeah, but
it's disturbing.
It's
but
very
it's not...
disturbing. Well, and then what's equally as disturbing is what happens to Proculus later, where Caligula just absolutely hates him, and he strings him up from the ceiling, and then they torture him, and then after he's dead, this woman starts / all over him. Like, just weird shit like that happens, and you're like, why am I watching this? Because there's really not much of a story going on.
because the goddamn random number generator.
I know, thank you, Patrick. But because the whole story, like, there really is no story. The story is that Caligula's crazy, he wanted power, he took it by force, and now he's paranoid that everybody's out to get him or kill him or remove him from power. And the whole movie is about him trying to... Well, the whole movie is about him going crazier and crazier until the end, where he gets killed.
Yeah.
And Claudius becomes the emperor.
But like by the time they kill him, you feel nothing.
No.
And I don't know what you're supposed to feel in that scene. I don't know, because it doesn't work, because he comes off as crazy pretty early on. The second he kills Macro, the second he has Gemellus identify Macro, and he's putting Gemellus on the spot, and he's like, identify the killer, and Gemellus is like, am I supposed to say what I really saw? Yeah. And then like they do the close up of Malcolm McDowell, and he just like,
and he's throwing his eyes over.
He just like, come on, right there. And the second he does that, it's like, okay, he's gone, he's evil. There's no fall from the fall from grace has already happened, and now it's just like we're reveling in it, and it's just it's not an enjoyable film to watch. And again, going back to, I understand Guccione threw in that lesbian scene. I understand Guccione made that orgy a lot more explicit than it ever was supposed to be, but I don't think Tinto Brass's film has anything to say.
No.
I don't think
totally agree.
Guccione ruined the movie. is what I'm saying. I think, and weirdly, I think the Guccione scenes, maybe not that lesbian one, but I think the explicit stuff in the orgy was fitting compared to the rest of the film.
So, Patrick, I totally agree with you.
Because the violence is just as shocking as the sex. That's
exactly
something we haven't really stressed.
And I want you to know I agree with you, and I think if the hardcore stuff didn't exist in this film, then it would not be a noteworthy film. We probably wouldn't be talking about it. We'd be like, oh. And also, I'm sure it would be an hour shorter. You know?
Yeah, that wouldn't hurt this film. I know this has, this has the look, and it doesn't really have the feel, but it has the look of a Ben-Hur type film. But like, just because you have those sets, and just because your actors wear sandals, you don't have to make a 2.5 hour movie.
Well, especially when most of it is sex. Because we understand, we as the audience understand that Caligula's crazy. He throws these wild parties. People in Rome were also possibly a little crazy and were throwing sex parties and just banging each other all the time. We as the audience understand that. We don't need a new orgy scene every 15 minutes.
Oh, God, we don't, yeah. So one orgy's enough. I mean...
Now, and the only interesting scenes in the movie are like... everything with Peter O'Toole because he's
because he's a great actor. He's he's on half speed.
Yeah,
and he's still leaving an impression. Yeah. Also, the makeup on him.
Oh yeah,
is amazing. I don't know if he's supposed to have like leprosy or something.
I think it's like syphilis or VD or something.
It looks like amazing, and it's like everything about like Peter O'Toole's look. I'm like, I had to look up like how old is he, because he can't be that old, but like he looks like ancient. It reminds me of like the Max von Sydow makeup in The Exorcist, where you just forget you're watching like a middle-aged man. You think you're watching an 80-year-old.
I thought you were going to say the
in Strange Brew of the Teeth.
Yeah. Yes. Have you come to the Echelon Brewery? You're not getting out of here alive.
But I want to draw attention to something too, is like that this film does something that we're criticizing it for, and yet one of the most acclaimed television series of the 21st century did the exact same thing and got praised for it. Just the random sex in the background during like exposition scenes, that was a hallmark of Game of Thrones. And now obviously Game of Thrones is never as explicit as this is, but are we all just more accepting in 2011 when Game of Thrones airs, or is Game of Thrones done better? What's your diagnosis here?
So first off, I gotta say, I only ever saw
because my feeling is Game of Thrones was always at least a little bit overrated. Quality show, the first 4 seasons, but it was never on that Breaking Bad, Sopranos, Columbo level. It's a quality. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, I only ever saw the first season of Game of Thrones. I didn't really care to watch the rest of it. Yeah, and honestly, when Sean Bean was killed, I was like, okay, I'm done now. I don't need to watch the rest.
I got a chance to flick my bean, and now that my bean's been flicked, I'm done.
I feel the same way that you do in terms of the show. I think it was overrated, which is why I never sought out the rest of it.
It was never the best thing in the world.
And I personally think all of the sex in the show was unnecessary. Anybody claiming that it is, or that it was a total necessity.
I think most people acknowledged that much of it was unnecessary, but still respected it for basically just like keeping your attention on scenes that you otherwise might kind of zone out on. I think that was where Game of Thrones does do a lot of like rape and incest stuff that's supposed to be like shocking, and some of that works, some of it doesn't, as many fans of the show would point out.
But you know what Game of Thrones doesn't do?
It doesn't have Peter O'Toole. It does have Max von Sydow. Eventually.
Now, I will say, though, the Game of Thrones tactic may have worked in some ways in Caligula, but the problem is, with Caligula, they didn't
That's all that it is.
Well, that is all that it is, but also, they didn't have licking machines that a woman was peddling in the background.
No.
Game of Thrones also didn't have...
No one's smearing on anyone.
No. Game of Thrones didn't have people into cups and smearing on people. Game of Thrones didn't have a 3-minute long that ended with a woman filling her mouth with and then spitting it out on camera. Game of Thrones didn't have a woman tackling a midget to suck his Game of Thrones didn't have lots of close-ups of and...
Okay, I'm going to stop you because you're talking about all the Guccione stuff.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the Tinto brass stuff. Is Game of Thrones adjacent?
Oh, well, so you know what? So then, okay, so in that, I would say it is Game of Thrones adjacent, and I would say it may have worked in the same way, but we also don't know how graphic it was, but if we're going to say it was softcore, then I'm sure a lot of it would have worked. Or, I'm sure, speaking of that Isis priestess scene where there's that big orgy in that indoor pond pool.
Is this with Tiberius still alive?
No, this is with Caligula and Drusilla, and this is when Caligula is going to...
Oh, it's when he's trying to find a wife. Yes, okay, that scene.
Perhaps the original scene was...
The fact that we have to narrow down which orgy scene itself is kind of shocking.
I know. If it was a wide shot of this orgy, and then shots of the orgy in the background, or just shots of this orgy happening as Caligula and Drusilla are walking around, and Drusilla's explaining to Caligula these different women, their likes, dislikes, whatever the fuck, right? That may have worked. So I will agree with that. I think it probably would have worked much like Game of Thrones.
All in all, movie as a whole doesn't work for me for a few reasons. One, it's just lacking that humanity. Some of that I'm going to point to the Malcolm McDowell performance. He dials it up to 11 pretty early on.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of it is truly Gore Vidal's script, because at least how he describes it is not the film that we saw. And I know both he and the director have kind of disowned this film. So I don't know. But to me, this story isn't a story of a young man being corrupted by power. This is a story of a psychopath who finally gets a chance to wield power. I don't know.
But also, too, I think you're giving it too much credit.
And you've got Claudius right there. You've got the interesting Claudius. I know that's been told. There's a famous BBC miniseries, I, Claudius, or maybe it's a movie. And it's the novel, obviously, by Robert Graves. But, Claudius is right there. It's the most interesting story in all of ancient Rome, arguably.
And it's funny that you also say, because I think I'm pretty much ready to move on from this movie, but it's funny that you say it's not really an interesting story.
No.
It isn't, because it's also barely a story. It's just a crazy person getting crazier. There really is no story. There's more story in the first 5 minutes of a porn video you'd see on Pornhub than there is in this movie.
One last positive thing to point out, the music. Bruno Nicolai is the composer. It's weird. If you look at the soundtrack album on Wikipedia, there's a ton of names on there, and I know he went by some fake name, as some of the Italians are wont to do, but Bruno Nicolai, who I know he did some spaghetti westerns, I don't remember which ones, Day of Anger maybe. That theme that comes in the opening credits is really great, and it's an iconic opening credits image. The image is on the poster. It's the Caligula coin with blood coming down. It's great. It's a fantastic poster. When that music comes in the opening credits, that dun 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 dun, it's this very waltzy kind of music. It's so awesome. I actually wish they used that music more. I think that's the only time it comes up. The rest of the score is good though. But that music is really, really recognizable to me, and it made me think that it's a classical piece that wasn't done for the movie. But no, I think what it is one, I had seen the trailer for Caligula many times before I ever saw the movie, because it was this fascinating film to me. Again, this is back when I thought it was literally intended to be a hardcore pornography film with John Gielgud in it for some reason. But also, I think it's been used in other trailers as well. I think I recognize it from other trailers, and I haven't had a chance to dive into that and find out which ones that might have been, but maybe I don't know, maybe some sword and sorcery epic from the 80s, maybe a Conan-type movie or something.
Oh, who was it? Oh, shit. Sorry, you just reminded me. The guy who did all the costuming and stuff for this, I think his name was it's Donato, or something Donato. Danilo Donati, that's it.
Oh, okay.
He worked on a sword and sorcery movie called Rouge something. What is it? Something Rouge? God damn it, Patrick. I'm failing here.
How am I supposed to know?
Never mind.
What's the point? What was the point of that?
Well, he worked on a sword and sorcery movie. And
so that's all Italy was making at the time. This is before. I guess this is right around the time 1980 would have been their first Alien ripoffs, and 81, 82 is when they started ripping off Escape from New York and Mad Max 2 or The Road Warrior. So it's at this time they were making Italian peplum films, I believe is the term that was used. And that is I get why this is an Italian-American production. This is notable in that it's an Italian film that's not trying to rip off anything. It's an Italian exploitation film, but this is just these Italian films were truly inspired by like the Ben-Hurs and the Ten Commandments of yesteryear. And then this one just happens to be all of that with the director of the Nazi exploitation film Salon Kitty, and what are you gonna do?
Yeah, this. Sorry, I was just looking it up while you were talking there. The costume designer, he worked on like a bunch of Italian movies: The Gospel According to Saint Matthew, Oedipus Rex, The Taming of the Shrew from 1967, Oedipus Rex also from 67, Romeo and Juliet from 68.
Oh, that's the Franco Zeffirelli film starring Basil Exposition as Tybalt, and starring Olivia Hussey, who I've joked about is. No woman has been the schoolboy's first tits as often as Olivia Hussey has been, with how many times that film's been shown in like high school English classes. And it's really weird considering she's like 16 in that movie or something like that.
Oh, also, earlier you were talking about Pasolini movies?
Yeah.
The costumer did the costumes for Canterbury Tales and for Arabian Nights.
Yeah. And the Decameron, probably.
But Red Sonja, that's what it was. That's what I was thinking of.
Oh, okay. Why would you say Rouge?
I don't know.
That's an American film. Yeah, Red Sonja is from the same... Whatever the comics creator that did Conan created the character of Red Sonja, I believe. Yeah. And Arnold appears in Red Sonja. I don't think he plays Conan, though. But I've never seen that film.
He plays his cousin Conant.
What?
Conan? Conan? I don't know. Okay, let's move on.
So speaking of bad humor, Nightmare Sisters from 1988, directed by David DeCoteau, who this has got to be the third or fourth DeCoteau joint we've featured. He's the director, of course, of Dr. Alien, one of our personal favorite sex comedy films. Director of Puppet Master 3, a top 3 Puppet Master film that we've covered. Of course, we've only covered 3, but it's better than the original Puppet Master. I was really impressed with Puppet Master 2 when we covered that. David DeCoteau, an icon of the late 80s, early 90s direct-to-video era. Did a lot of work with Charles Band and Full Moon. This film, no connection at all to Charles Band. But yeah, this is, as I mentioned, a film that I have on Blu-ray, released by Vinegar Syndrome, features a little minute-long director's introduction. I learned a few things from that, and then I also, after watching the film, watched most of the commentary track that's done with DeCoteau and star Linnea Quigley. Learned some things from that. I was actually shocked. The Wikipedia page for this film is weirdly descriptive, and so much of what I learned from...
Oh, really?
David DeCoteau talking about this film is in the Wikipedia page. So whoever wrote the Wikipedia page is either an employee of Vinegar Syndrome or owns the same Blu-ray that I do. But the film in Blu-ray is a 2K scan. It's color corrected. DeCoteau introduces the film and says it was made as a bet following Sorority Babes and Slimeball Ballorama. Later in the commentary track, it's not so much a bet as it was like he kind of dared himself to make it. And then the reason he did that is I think he had 4 or 5 days, and he's like, I think it was 4 days. I think he heard that, was it Rick Sloan? I don't have it in, no, it was Fred Olen Ray had just made a film in 5 days, and he's like, I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to beat him, I'm going to do 4 days.
Okay.
Here's the thing. So Nightmare Sisters, charming story of 3 nerdy loser sorority girls. These are Linnea Quigley, who's the buck-toothed, kind of ugly one. Melody. Brinke Stevens, who's the nerdy one. Marcy. And there's Michelle Bauer, who's the fat one.
Mickey.
Yeah. And so and I'm just going to refer to the actress names probably because I know these actresses so well. Like, they're losers at their sorority. So, of course, all the other sorority sisters are out of town, more or less out of convenience for the cast. And they invite some boys over, and it's not going great at first at this party. But then they whip out the crystal ball, and they get possessed by oversexed demons. Sure, it's a story we've all seen before. But have we seen it with a racist fortune teller guy?
Oh my god!
This is how the movie opens.
You mean have we seen it with a 10-minute introduction?
Yeah, it goes on for so long. It felt like an hour. And first of all, my first note of this film is Comic Sans ? because I'm pretty sure the credits are in that. I'm not 100% sure. But then we get this fortune teller. There's a fun little visual gag. It says, like, fortunes told, whatever. You know, it lists, like, 3 spiritual things, and then it also says, like, tax returns or something. It's like, okay, that's kind of funny. This medium guy, he's played by Dookie Flyswatter, which is a name that I had heard, and I didn't know why, and I looked him up. I think he was kind of just like a local LA celebrity. He appears in a number of horror movies, probably of this kind of budget, probably a little bit higher budgeted than this sometimes. But he's just like a punk rock musician, and I guess he liked horror, and they threw him in a lot of low-budget horror movies, and some of his songs appear in the films. One of the song Linnea Quigley lip-syncs to is actually a Linnea Quigley song, because Linnea Quigley was in a punk rock band.
Oh.
I know the song that plays. It's a Dookie Flyswatter song that plays during the 45-minute-long bath scene.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
That song is, I believe, also featured in a 45-minute-long shower scene in Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama. But Dookie Flyswatter, back-to-back DeCoteau films, he's in, you don't see him, but he voices the imp, Uncle Impy, in Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama, where he's clearly doing like a black soul man type accent, and it's like, so 2 movies in a row he's incredibly racist, because here he's doing this South Asian, oh, would you like a bag with that, you know, like the Indian, like, apu, and it's just like terrible.
It's so bad.
And it's so bad, and the scene goes on for so long, but he's got this woman, and the woman wants to confront her husband, and then he pulls it up in the crystal ball, and they apparently see him having sex with another woman, and then eventually arms come out of the crystal ball, grab him, and then behead him. Just kind of fun. I like the arms coming out. I thought that was pretty cool.
At first I thought it was a joke, like it was gonna turn out that he was like a fake fortune teller, and that's how he scams money from people. But
he's not actually Indian, he's just putting on the accent.
Oh yeah, of course, because it was so bad. But it's actually part of the movie. Yeah, his head gets ripped off.
So that's the crystal ball. Following that scene, we are truly introduced to this film's visual style, which DeCoteau himself has described as security cam footage. Because everything's just flat, and he refers to this. He says that people have said his films look like they're shot with a security camera or something, and then he also has joked about, like, security cameras generally move horizontally, and his shots in this film do not move. But going to give him some credit here. I mean, not too much credit, because ultimately he put this 4-day imposition on himself, but 4 days they don't have time for coverage. This scene with the 3 Scream Queens all sitting down, it's painfully long. It's horrific to look at. And it is. It's so bad. But also, like, credit to the actresses, because this is all like one long take, and how much dialogue they have to get through. And Linnea Quigley's got the fake teeth in, and she mentioned the commentary track. They didn't have any time to practice with that. So it's like it's a bad scene. It's an awful scene, but like...
But there's also something that's kind of like cute about it. You know what I mean? It's these. It's
not.
It's these.
It's not the worst thing.
No, but it's also, you know, these 3 nerdy sorority girls who just want to hang out with some boys.
Yeah, they're all a little boy crazy. Now, there's the 3 of them, so they all have their quirks that make them unattractive. I'm going to ask you, which one was the least attractive to begin with? Who was the most off-putting in terms of what they were clearly doing to the actress?
Oh,
because I think Linnea is the only one who's like kind of unattractive here. I think Brinke just has glasses. Like they don't do anything to her.
Yeah.
And Michelle Bauer is clearly a fat suit, but like if you see her from the shoulders up, she's like,
but they don't do anything. Yes, you're probably
there's
right.
no makeup. It's just a fat suit. So like, and in this scene, like, yeah. And I'm also going to say this film kind of confirms. So these 3 actresses all appear in Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama, which I'm going to keep saying that title because it's fun to say. It's a David DeCoteau film. Brinke and Michelle, they're pledges.
Okay, yeah.
For this sorority, and they're forced to go to a bowling alley with a couple of boys that spied on them when they were taking a shower, and they have to steal a bowling trophy, and they accidentally release Uncle Impy. Imp is the term, but genie-type creature who grants them wishes, and in the wishes there's a bit of a monkey's paw type thing, and it's just terrible. I love it. But Linnea Quigley in that is like the coolest character ever. She's just this like badass like biker chick who comes in to rob the place. She's really fun. And here, what they're doing to her, it's borderline criminal. I feel so bad for her. But I will say this film confirms what I've believed for a while, is that Brinke Stevens is the best actress of the three.
I think undoubtedly, yes.
Yeah, I think she's like genuinely good in here. She does the funny like little girl voice when she's dressing up as a little girl. Like she's got range. Linnea has some good comic timing. I think Michelle Bauer is not a good actress at all, but she's hot.
Exactly. That's
yeah. She's also really tan in this movie, like borderline blackface. Like she's so tan.
There's even like a shot near the end where the camera's kind of like looking down at her and she's tied up with the other women, and it almost looks like her face has been pasted onto like a black person's body. And it took me a minute.
It's more the body that's super tan than the
her
face.
face is not tan.
Yeah,
her
facially
body.
She's tan.
Yeah,
facially she's still tan. It's just
it's strange.
But yeah, it's like this woman has never worn a shirt in her life, and it's Michelle Bauer. She frequently hasn't.
Yeah.
They invite the boys over, and the boys are in a similar situation as them. They're fraternity pledges who get no respect. They're kind of bullied by the elder members of the fraternity, and they're kind of nerdy. And I actually thought these three actors were all pretty good. I don't care enough to look up their names.
I can tell you right now, there's Richard Gabai, William Dristes, and Mark Vauder.
I could have found this through Wikipedia, but this came through in the commentary track. But one of the older fraternity brothers went on to be a successful Hollywood screenwriter who wrote Sweet Home Alabama with Reese Witherspoon. I think he's the one who...
Cox.
Yeah, he's the one who gets blown... Oh, shit. I wrote down the actual character names, which is not how I'm referring to them. So Melody, Linnea Quigley's with Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
Dwayne is with Marcy. Marcy... Which one's Marcy?
Brinke.
Okay, he's with Brinke, and then Freddie's with Mickey, who's Michelle Bauer. When they're all kind of pairing up, this isn't in front of the women, but they're all like, "Ew, I'm with that fat girl," and it's like, "Ew, that Brinke Stevens' glasses are half her body weight," and it's like, again, the Brinke Stevens complaints are so off. Like Michelle Bauer, when she loses the fat suit, obviously she's much hotter, but and Linnea quickly loses the buck teeth. But, like, with the exception of losing her shirt, Brinke Stevens is no hotter after possessed by a demon than she is before. They could have done something more makeup-wise with her, but again, 4 days.
Which apparently all the actresses, they did their own makeup and wore their own clothes as costumes.
But it's not like Linnea quickly made her own buck teeth, though.
No.
So the party's not going too well. I think... Melody and Kevin, who did go on a date before where Kevin was worried that he was never going to see her again because he felt that he had gone too far and kind of forced himself on her. But then she's like, "Kevin, I practically raped you," over the phone. She says that.
Yeah,
so it's actually the other way around. So those two are actually getting along just fine. The other two are like, "Oh God, it's not happening." There's some funny stuff here. The scene where Brinke Stevens pulls out a photo album and is like showing pictures of her as like a baby is hilarious. I laughed out loud at that. There's another very funny scene too where when Freddie was talking about how his stepdad died, or he's like talking about that was when my dad died, like my dad always wanted me to go to military school. I wonder if I should still do that. Michelle Bauer, who's been just shoving food in her mouth the entire time, stops and goes like, "Oh, really?" And then he's like, "Yeah, but he's just my stepdad." And then she just continues. That was really funny too.
Yeah.
And then so they have this like seance thing. The girls are possessed. They're immediately topless. And then they're immediately topless. And again, they lose all the traits that made them unattractive before. And then we have the famous pie scene.
Which, by the way, that's my favorite part.
The pie scene?
Yeah. I love it though because not because what it turns into, but because all three girls, as soon as they've transformed into sexy versions of themselves,
they're like oiled up.
They're like, "Oh, do you want a snack?" And they're being so like seductive. And Michelle Bauer's like, "Yeah, do you want a sweet snack?" "Oh, I made a pie in the kitchen." It's
an actual pie.
Yeah. That was my favorite.
This film does establish early on. Michelle Bauer says something like, "I love to cook," and then the other two are like, "We know." And this film exists in a universe where fat people love cooking.
Yes.
Jim, as a fat person myself, I can relatively confidently say, I mean, I actually kind of enjoy cooking. I'm not good at it, but I like doing different things. But like, a lot of people are fat because they don't cook at all, and they just eat potato chips, and like this film had like a joke that didn't work for me with that.
Also, speaking of food in this movie, I love that when Michelle Bauer's like, oh, I'm going to make some snacks for this party, she bakes like, a dozen cookies, and then it cuts to all three girls sitting on the couch, and they've got like the plate of cookies on a paper plate, and then like a couple of Twizzlers also on a paper plate. And it's like, you can tell this movie was made very quickly.
They didn't have craft service budget. The famous pie scene, which is hilariously just one long, boring wide shot. Again, it's amazing how, the security cam DeCoteau is so fair, because it's like the film is shot so flatly. But again, it's because of budget. It's because of time, I guess, more than budget. They're related. But like, no one made you make this movie. You wanted to make it, and this is what you wanted it to look like, because these were the hurdles that you gave yourself. I mean, some of it was like, literally they had just like leftover film stock from Sorority Babes, and then they were able to rent a camera, and then I don't know where the 4 days is the self-imposed thing, and that is, unforgivable, but listen, Fredo and Ray may have shot that film in 5 days, but knowing Fredo and Ray, he should have at least used 6. Like, I don't think we've covered a Fredo and Ray film in this podcast, have we? Oh God. Fredo and Ray is a notorious schlockmeister. Let's put it that way.
Schlockmeister.
Star Slammer is a.
Now I have a question for you. Is Schlockmeister anything like
Burgermeister, Meisterburger?
I was gonna say anything like the Beermeister at Arsenal Brewery?
Oh, Schlockmeister, Fredo and Ray. So, of course, the younger fraternity brothers had to sneak out of their place because some violation.
They were being too gay.
They were being homos.
Yeah, hold on. I wrote this line down.
Worth noting because David DeCoteau, homosexual filmmaker, of course.
There's this line, so like, because they're arguing about the women, and they're like, I don't want to go. They're too fat. They're too dorky, whatever. And then they're arguing and wrestling on the floor. And the older frat guys come in, and they're like, and one of them says something like, he's like, he's like, are you guys being faggots or something? And then the other guy goes, you guys queering off down there? And I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard.
Yeah. So they initially are going to be like kicked out of the fraternity, but then when it's discovered that they got an invite to the hottest sorority in school, then it's like, okay, I guess we won't kick you out, but we're still not going to let you leave at all for the weekend. And they do like a Ferris Bueller like fake body thing, and also there, if I'm not mistaken, aren't there only 2 beds in that room for 3 people?
I think there's 3.
Are there 3?
They're kind of set up in a U shape.
So when the brothers find this out, then they go over to the other party, and they're spying on the pie scene. The cuts to the brothers are the only interruptions of that one long shot. But then the women decide, like, hey, we're going to go up and take a bath. You want to join us? They do, but Kevin says, no, I'm going to stop us. And as they're up there, he's like, guys, something's wrong. They changed. And they're like, who cares? Like, they're hot now. Like, so they eventually go up to, like, spy on them in the bath, and this scene is absurdly long.
Oh my god, it's like 5 minutes.
And there's like barely enough room for the women. Linnea Quigley keeps dropping the soap because she has no idea what to do in the scene because there's no direction, because David DeCoteau just says, here, just take a sexy bath.
He's like, touch each other on the tits.
Brinke Stevens keeps like kind of getting up, but then keeps getting back down. There's like a lot of that.
Yeah, and then Michelle Bauer keeps doing this. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Now, interestingly, when they're spying on them, there's a line that says something about balloons. And there's actually balloon sound effects when they're, like, rubbing their tits.
Yeah.
Now, I have not seen this version, but it is on the Blu-ray. But there is a TV edit, because when this was picked up by USA Network to air on USA Up All Night, they're like, hey, we want to show this, but we can only show, like, 20 minutes of the movie because there's so much nudity. DeCoteau goes back and reshoots this scene and presumably some others, and it's just like the women playing around, I think, in lingerie with actual balloons. Because he's like, okay, we already have the balloon sound effect. We already had the balloon line. Let's make the most of it. This is still like a sexy thing for them to do.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, so then the other brothers get in there, and Kevin says to the freshman, he's like, okay, whatever you do, don't let them touch you. I don't like what's going on here. And so they get that message, but then they also kind of get picked off one by one. Brinke Stevens doing like a sexy schoolgirl thing and also doing this like funny schoolgirl voice takes her date, whoever the hell he is, Dwayne, and Brinke Stevens takes him out and they're going to play hide and seek. But right as he goes to go hide, he gets snatched by the brothers and he gets like tied up in a closet. And there's also a similar scene with Michelle Bauer and Freddie gets snatched. And so Michelle Bauer goes and takes her man, the older fraternity brother, is going to go down on him. And then she's got monster teeth. And then she kills him by biting his dick off or whatever. We get dust coming up.
Yeah, like smoke and
yeah, there's some line with the Dookie fly swatter, the absurdly long racist scene where he said something like the man was in bed with like ashes or something.
Oh, that's right, he did say that. Yeah.
And then Linnea Quigley has her scene where she does like a sexy karaoke striptease singing a Linnea Quigley song. And they had to reshoot this scene, too, because it's just like... It's almost like there's not even supposed to be nudity. It's just like her shirt just doesn't stay on.
Keeps on falling out.
Yeah, which I'm sure that's how it was supposed to be done. But they had to reshoot that scene. But yeah, she does... It's like the entire song. And then they pull Kevin away. And then she goes down on the writer of Sweet Home Alabama and kills him. And then there's one last guy left. Brinke Stevens comes back inside because she can't find her date in the hide and seek. And then so it's the three of them all take on this last guy in Brinke Stevens' room, which is, I guess we should say Michelle Bauer's room is like a jungle room.
Yeah.
And she had this like me Tarzan, you Jane. She had like a Raquel Welch loincloth bikini thing.
Also, there's a point where she deep-throated a whole banana, which was impressive.
With a classic cut in between, went halfway through the banana. We just get a cut and then another angle, and then suddenly the entire banana's gone. It's so seamless. And then Brinke Stevens' room is decorated like a psychopath lives there. And,
it's almost like Saw was there, or like a
there's like circus noises I think going on, and the whole thing was like Brinke Stevens is the flea market person, so she just buys like weird stuff. That's what's going on. That's why this room is this way. But all three of them kill this other guy, and the other boys who at this point free themselves see it, and they're like, oh shoot. Now we kind of know what we're dealing with. We need to get like an exorcist in here. And there's a fun joke. It's like, well, how do you even get an exorcist? And then they just find one in the phone book.
Which he's my favorite part of the movie, this guy, this exorcist.
He looks like Caligula. I was so disappointed this wasn't. This felt like, and maybe if it were a bigger budget and more than 4 days, maybe this would have been like a cameo actor. This feels like it should be a known person.
I feel like it should be, oh, fuck. What's his name, Patrick?
George Buckflower.
No, stop it.
No, I'm naming actors who would appear in a movie like
his adopted daughter.
Woody Allen?
Woody Allen. This seems like
Why
a
would you
very
guess
Woody
a Jew
Allen
as a... I guess this guy isn't a Catholic priest.
No, he's not even a priest at all.
And then there's the great line. It's like, what do you expect from an exorcist who takes American Express or something? But yeah, he comes in, They don't go all the way. It feels like, because they give him a name. It's like Lancaster Mirren is the name of Max von Sydow in The Exorcist. It's a similar name to that. Do you know what that is?
I don't remember, but I remember very shortly afterwards, this exorcist makes the point. He's like, oh yeah, I had to go out and exorcise this woman who was spitting up pea soup and cursing and stuff like that and fucking herself with a cross. And they're like, oh, I think they made a movie about that. And he's like, yeah, and I never once got any of the royalties.
Yeah, there's a few Exorcist references. The point I'm making is that the scene where he shows up, they should have recreated that famous shot.
Yeah, they should have, yes.
And maybe they couldn't because it's like a one-story house or something. I don't know. But it felt like a better filmmaker would have done an Exorcist shot. But he comes in, he looks like Caligula. He's pretty funny.
Yes.
He says that they're dealing with a succubus, and that how we defeat a succubus, you have to draw it out and then fight it in its real form. And so their grand plan, they use one of the boys to distract the girls and bring them in, and then they cover them with a net and they tie them up. What do they? I think they kind of just insult it, and then the demon comes out. Is that it?
So the exorcist starts kind of like exorcising the succubus out of the three girls, because he's made the point that there's one succubus controlling all three. Yeah, the exorcist, he just insults the demon. I think he's like, "Come on, get out of there!" And the succubus is like, "No, you're gonna have to try harder than that." And he's like,
the shot of the demon first emerging is actually amazing. It's so good.
Oh, it is, yeah.
And then we get the close-ups of the demon, and it's like, oh well, you know.
I know it looked like a '60s Star Trek monster.
Yeah, it's like what are you gonna do, you know, with this budget?
Yeah, but he kicks the demon out by saying, "Are you not gonna show your ugly face? Get out of here!" And then it left their bodies.
Yeah, and at this point, the girls are normal. I actually couldn't really tell. Did they? I mean, they're normal. They remain sexy, right?
No, they totally turned back to normal.
No, because they're still topless. And Michelle Bauer doesn't have a fat suit on.
Well, they're all still wearing their clothes. And I think she's not wearing a fat suit because she's tied up.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay. You know, they basically get nowhere with how to defeat the succubus. And then Kevin's like, hey, remember the winning play from the homecoming game? And then they just, like, pretend to hike a ball, and then they just tackle the demon outside.
No, what happens is...
no, that's exactly what happens.
No, they're trying to figure out how to get rid of the succubus. And Melody looks up. Linnea Quigley goes, "You have to destroy the crystal ball and trap the succubus."
Oh, that's it. Yeah, they take the ball from the succubus.
And then one of the kids just runs outside and just like throws like a 30-yard pass, and then the crystal ball explodes in the backyard, and that's it. It gets sucked into limbo.
Yeah, and then they all play Twister just as they did before.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
That's pretty much the film. Listen, I'll pull clips.
Okay.
But you are on record saying they are back to their unattractive selves, because I couldn't tell, which is itself a problem. Again, because every shot is, we don't get there's not a close-up in the entire fucking film. With the exception
I'm
of
almost
Dookie
positive
Flyswatter
they're back to their unattractive selves.
So, Jim, what did you think of Nightmare Sisters?
Hey, it was funny. You know?
It's funnier than you would expect it to be, especially a lot of these, whether it's DeCoteau or not, a lot of these, like, stupid, like, boner horror comedies are not funny. This movie has a number of laughs. Not like, huge laughs, but, like, it has funny performances. Brinke Stevens is funny. Linnea Quigley is funny. The boys, the three boys are funny.
Exactly, yeah.
Caligula is funny.
Yeah, I think it's that and tits that are really just... That's
the main thing. But, like, this movie has funny performances. It's not hilarious. This isn't Airplane. This isn't Young Frankenstein. This is Nightmare Sisters. This is what we have.
I think,
and it's shot in an incredibly amateurish way. I'm always hesitant to say I could shoot a better film, and I'll admit I probably couldn't get the sound as good. I would at least move the camera around every now and then.
Yeah, and I think that's what really hurts this movie.
I would at least use a close-up here or there.
Yes, exactly.
I would probably shoot a shorter bath scene, which maybe makes it worse. I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think this is necessarily like a bad movie, but it's not great.
No,
you know,
of course not. It's a direct-to-video late '80s movie that actually fell into obscurity. It largely, not a lot of people saw this when it like first came out. This was like a USA Up All Night. Like the people who saw this saw it on television, which is a different edit. And then I think this film was like really hard to find for a long time. And then the good folks at Vinegar Syndrome got the bright idea to release a Blu-ray for some reason. But hey, I bought it. It worked.
Yeah, there's nothing offensive about this movie.
It's the 45-minute long Indian stereotype.
Yeah,
scene.
I mean that's that. Yeah, okay, sure, that part. But it's just like
it's a third of the movie. It's so long.
It is. It's literally 10 minutes long. Because I checked the time and I was like, why is it 10 minutes?
It was shockingly long, and all it is the setup. I want to note that in the credits it said fake head supplied by Dookie Flyswatter. Dookie Flyswatter made a papier-mâché version of his own head at one point for some reason.
Great. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much to say about this, to be honest. Like, I like this movie. I don't love it. I agree. I like it.
It's a charming film. If you're going to blow 85 minutes on a raunchy sex comedy, you can watch a lot that will not make you laugh as often as this film does.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
They may be better shot. They may have higher production values. They will have higher production values. That's a borderline certainty. But this movie made me laugh a number of times. Brinke Stevens pulling out the photo album is hilarious. Michelle Bauer, the comic timing of her stopping eating when her date says that his dad died, and then just continuing to stuff her face the second he says, "Oh, actually, it was just my stepdad," is funny.
Yeah. When I say it's inoffensive, minus the accent, it's a light-hearted comedy movie.
It's a romp. You famously used the word romp to describe, I think it was Deathstalker or something. Some movie that absolutely I would not use the word romp to describe you used, but like this one is a lighthearted romp.
And that's exactly what it is. You know, there's no deeper meanings put into it. There's no...
It's by no means an effective horror film. It's not even really trying in that way. It doesn't go as far into the Exorcist parody as it easily could have.
I wish it had
think
gone
is a
little
negative because I think they could have done a lot more with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine movie. You know, that's it. Yeah, I was... because I watched this after I watched Caligula, and I feel like this was just kind of like a palate cleanser. I will kind of forever look at this movie as...
Well, half the film is people washing themselves. I mean, it's yeah. Again, I can't really pull clips of that for the YouTube. I don't know.
Oh, shut up.
I'm limited. This YouTube video is going to suck.
But maybe you can pull clips of the one where they're like... where they're in their underwear with balloons.
Maybe I can find the balloon scene. So, Jim, Caligula, Nightmare Sisters, Tinto Brass, David DeCoteau, which film do you prefer?
I have to go with Nightmare Sisters.
Make your case.
I don't think I have to. I think Caligula makes its own case. Really, the only thing I really enjoyed about Caligula was the set design and the costumes.
Some of the performances.
Yes, yeah, some of the performances.
Peter O'Toole, some of Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, but the whole movie...
Teresa Ann Savoy was fine.
It was just such a slog.
I like how she kept calling him Little Boots.
Yeah, Little Boots. Cute. And I wonder where that...
Because that's what Caligula means, I think, in Latin.
Oh... Okay, that makes sense. But it's just such a slog to get through.
Yeah, it is a slog. It's one of the longest movies we've watched on this podcast, really outside of Once Upon a Time in the West and maybe the director, because we watched the director's cut of Aliens. But yeah, it's absurdly long, and it's not even the longest version of it, which is another thing I call into question. If the main complaint was about them adding sex stuff, why is the more definitive version 20 minutes longer?
Yeah.
Answer me that, 91-year-old Italian director Tinto Brass. Answer me that. Or answer me that, Malcolm McDowell. You're the one who endorsed the film. Tinto Brass still hasn't done anything with it. I mean, it is possible that in addition to adding a lot of hardcore stuff, Guccione cut a lot of good scenes. I will admit that's a possibility. I question it. Let me ask you something else, Jim, before I get to which of these two films that I prefer. Are you surprised to learn that there are unofficial Italian Caligula sequels?
No, I'm not surprised.
At least one film was made, directed by schlock auteur Bruno Mattei. He directed a film, I think, called Caligula 2 Messalina.
Oh, you know
which
what?
is like a terrible title.
I read that.
And then just recently I found out that it's basically a parody, and it's like, oh, that makes a little bit more sense because the title's silly.
I read that, and apparently Caligula was supposed to come out in like 77, but it kept on getting pushed back to 79.
Yeah, right? I was surprised to see that the film was shot in 76, and I'm like, why wasn't it released until 79? I didn't really know.
Well, then that movie that you just mentioned, what was it called?
Caligula 2 Messalina.
Yeah, so the original title is just Messalina, and it came out in Italy before Caligula.
Oh.
But in some places in the world, it was released after Caligula.
As Caligula 2. Yeah.
So exactly. Okay. So people thought it was actually connected to Caligula, and it actually
no,
was not.
It should be noted, Bruno Mattei, the director, also famously directed a film released in countries without functioning copyright laws as Terminator 2. And this was a film that actually predates Terminator 2 Judgment Day, but it's actually ripping off another James Cameron movie because it's such a blatant ripoff of Aliens. It's amazing. It's actually a fun exploitation film in its own right.
All right, you bunch of pussies, I'm back and I'm kicking ass.
The U.S. title is Shocking Dark because legally they couldn't release it as Terminator 2. But that's a good one. I like that. I own that one on Blu-ray. I have a problem, Jim.
Yeah, it's okay. I appreciate your problem.
That one I think is Severin Films, not Vinegar Syndrome. I think Severin Films is more the Bruno Mattei stuff. But Jim, I also prefer Nightmare Sisters. For me, this is a slam dunk. This is not close. I kind of hated Caligula. I respect the artistry and craftsmanship of the costumes, of the sets, of even some of the performances, of certainly the music, Bruno Nicolai, and I just have no idea what the hell they were trying to do with the story or the themes. Again, I insist that I think the Guccione hardcore inserts are relatively fitting for the movie. I just think it's a bad movie regardless of that.
Yeah.
And Nightmare Sisters doesn't have even the budget for insert shots. I mean, they don't even have edits in the film. It's amazing. But it's a funny film.
It is.
It gets some laughs out of me. Not a ton of laughs. Your gut doesn't get a workout, but you get some laughs and some relatively big ones.
And the film knows what it is. It knows that it's not a great grand movie. It's not trying to be a horror movie. It's trying to be like this silly sex comedy.
Yeah, is it perfect? Hell no. The camera needs to move. Dookie Flyswatter needs to not do the Indian accent. We need a close-up here or there. The film needs to be edited at all, But it's still kind of a funny movie. It's a charming movie. In their heyday, I believe they've, because Brinke Stevens, Michelle Bauer, Linnea Quigley, they, still appear in, low-budget schlock. They've probably made a ton of movies together at this point. Mm-hmm. But at the time, this was, in their prime, they only made 2 movies together. It's this and Sorority Babes and the Slime Bubble-orama. I think this film is significantly better than Sorority Babes. I don't know if I have a good argument for why. Maybe I'd need to see that one again, but this one just was funny to me. The exception of a very funny George Buckflower performance in Sorority Babes and the Slime Bubble-orama. You don't get much out of that movie except for the incredible Michelle Bauer nudity. I don't think Linnea is even topless in that film. I could be wrong. I enjoy Nightmare Sisters. If you like B-movies,
yeah, then that's
if you like these 3 actresses, whether for their comic timing or for their bodies, you get something out of it. Mm-hmm. So, Jim, do you think this is a good drive-in double feature? Caligula, Nightmare Sisters, your thoughts?
No. No, because I never want to see Caligula ever again. And that's it. I'm just I'm so over this movie.
Let's say your first time ever watching Caligula was the first half of a Caligula Nightmare Sisters double feature. You still hate it?
If it was the first half of Caligula?
No. If that was the first half of the double feature. I'm not saying you have to see it again. Oh. I'm saying you have already seen the 2 films together.
No. No. It's over. I don't even...
Yeah, listen, 2 hour and 36-minute movies don't work well as part of double features. And yes, Nightmare Sisters is short, but Caligula takes a lot out of you.
It does. It's such an exhausting thing to sit through. And then on top of that, if I had never seen Caligula before, and you said, hey, let's go see a double feature, Caligula and Nightmare Sisters, I'd be like, oh, hey, isn't that the movie
where Mr. Magoo kills himself in a pool?
Yeah, and it's notorious for like a million orgy scenes and stuff. And you'd be like, yeah, and I'd say, I think I'm good.
Only 100.
But I'd say no. I think I'm good, thanks. Also, maybe it's just me, but a strange pornographic movie about a Roman emperor doesn't really mix well with a sex comedy that was shot in 4 days.
Also, can I just say that, as far as scenes that go on for absurdly long periods of time, the orgy scene with the senator's wives versus the bathtub scene, how much more enjoyable and just in on it that everyone was in Nightmare Sisters? Like, every actress knows what they're... I mean, I know, like, I was joking, like, the actresses literally don't know what they're doing because they don't know why the scene's so long. But, like, they know why the scene's in the movie, at least. As opposed to Malcolm McDowell didn't even know that was going on in the movie, and Tinto Brass didn't either.
Yeah, exactly. I think just everything surrounding Caligula just makes it such a disgusting movie. The way it was made, how it pissed everybody off, how pretty much nobody except for Helen Mirren and Malcolm McDowell wanted to be involved in this movie.
I don't even know how Malcolm McDowell felt about it. I know he obviously endorsed the extended cut, but I don't know what he had to say about the theatrical version. He might have hated it too. We all know it led to more and more Peter O'Toole drinking.
Oh.
Yeah, so listen, we just did Caligula, a film with plenty of consensual sex, plenty of rape though as well. I regret to inform you that our next episode will feature more rape, but it will also feature Caligula.
Oh, great.
Because we've got The Last House on the Left from director Wes Craven, another controversial film, a rape revenge film. And then we also have Uninvited, which, yes, is the film about a killer cat within another cat. It also stars Clu Gulager, George Kennedy, probably some other washed-up character actors. I don't exactly remember. We got a Wes Craven Great on Clark double feature next time. That's cause for
much more exciting.
Alarm. Oh, exciting? Okay, sure. I'll accept that as well. But yeah, Jim, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me, buddy. It was a pleasure, as always.
Listeners, thanks for putting up with this.
Yeah, thanks, guys.